Hi everybody, I'm Craig Hall. Welcome to this edition of Indiana Story. Today we are in Richmond, Indiana at quite a historical site. In fact, I'll tell you what, come over here with me and meet my friend Bob. Bob, tell everybody who you are.
I'm Bob Jacobson, past president of the Starr Gennett Foundation.
The Starr what?
Starr Gennett, Starr Piano, Gennett Records. There's a big factory here 100 years ago, and they made some of the best pianos in America and recorded some of the most people who turned out to be the most famous recording artists of the 20th century.
That's pretty amazing. It's right here in Indiana, and I don't think that many people know anything about this history and the jazz legends that came here to this building right here. Is that where they came here on this property?
Here. All right, well, 1923, 24, 25, 26. In 27, Hoagy Carmichael recorded Stardust here in Richmond.
Wow, that is incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. In this building?
Well, in this site. This is where the records were printed and so on. And this building was built in 1917 at the beginning of the pressing of the Starr records here and Gennett Records. Now there was like 25 other buildings in this gorge area. We're part of the Whitewater Gorge, and that's why we were down here, because of the power supplied by the river. And so Richmond had a lot of factories down here in the gorge, the Whitewater Gorge.
Okay, so hydroelectricity.
Yep.
Brought all of this industry here, including jazz. So jazz in Indiana is a product of electricity.
Well, electricity eventually. They started recording electrically in 27, but see, they were recording 5 years before that acoustically. So it was a little different, springs and weights and things like that. So
can we take a look at this building?
Absolutely.
Let's go inside. And tell me what this, you say this was the pressing. What do you mean by that?
Well, the records were recorded in a studio, about 200 yards from here. But this big building was built in one of the last buildings, actually, in 1917. And they made keyboards here. They made phonographs, which is what we played our records on. We call them record players.
Sure.
And, of course, the records, just millions of records. At its height, we pressed 3 million records a year here. And the decline of that was the Great Depression.
Were they all jazz musicians at that time?
No, but they were regional folks. We had Guy Lombardo from London,
yes.
London, Ontario, came here. We had Father Earl Hines, came from Pittsburgh and recorded here as a 19-year-old. A lot of musicians from Chicago. Bix Beiderbecke from Iowa. Played a lot of music in Indiana, but he recorded here. Hoagy Carmichael was from Bloomington. He recorded here. And had a lot of people come up from Tennessee and Kentucky and recorded old-timey music. Country, we call it country music now. And we had gospel. We had gospel too. So a lot of genres, popular music, as well as jazz, country, gospel, the whole shebang.
You were telling me that this building actually, this is just part of what the building used to be.
Yes, it was a 6-story building. On some floors they're producing phonographs, other floors keyboards and parts of the piano. And then they had walkways between buildings up on the second and third floor to connect the buildings together. So think of this as a 35-acre factory with 25 buildings, with a railroad spur here, so they're offloading lumber. They're unloading pianos and records and sending them across country.
That is amazing. I love it. So private events in here now. That's what happens?
Yes, it gets rented. This is part of the Parks Department. This is a city park now. And there's been a couple $1 million renovating and making the parking better and making it friendly for visitors. And we have a Walk of Fame. We have a place where we honor the musicians who recorded here
Okay.
95 years ago.
So that's what I'm interested in is the Walk of Fame. I like that they have parties here today. Don't get me wrong, but I want to hear about yesterday. We've made it to the Walk of Fame here, and what are these made out of? What is this?
Well, this is the medallion. It's supposed to resemble a 78 record because that's the speed of the records that they were making here. And that's an image of Hoagy Carmichael. And he was here a couple different times recording, but he recorded his Stardust, his great song Stardust. He also recorded Washboard Blues here. And he's an Indiana kid.
Indiana native, definitely. How many of these plaques do we have down the sidewalk here?
We have about 30 medallions in the sidewalk, 30 individuals in the Walk of Fame. There's a few scattered around the city.
What year did they put these in? Where were they installed?
We've started in 2007, so they've been in about 12 years now. And every year, first couple of years, we put in about 20. And then the last few years, it's just been about one a year.
Well, let's take a look at a few more down here.
Now here's a wonderful country cowboy singer, Gene Autry. He recorded 39 sides for Gennett, most of them right here in Richmond.
39 sides, what does that mean?
That means 39 songs were printed. So a record has two sides. There was no such thing as long playing albums back then. So a record had two sides generally. The first records didn't.
Okay, so my math though, 39, that's an odd number. How did it have two sides?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
A mystery to be figured out here in Richmond, folks.
They were known to put different artists on one side than the other.
Okay,
That
all right.
occasionally happens.
That makes sense. I can go with that. I can believe that one. Hey, well, take a look over here. What do we have this?
Well, this is the smokestack, and it's been refurbished, and it's going to last a long time. But they had coal chutes there to the left. You might be able to see a little cement thing. So this is a ridge line about 80 feet above where we're standing, and a railroad trestle from Cincinnati to Muncie went across there, and they could drop coal for the power plant because there's a fairly good-sized power plant that provided some of the energy for the factory here.
You've brought me to another site, or another spot here on the site. I see the sign. What was this?
Well, this was the original recording studio, the acoustic recording studio for Gennett Records. And this is where the musicians would have walked in right here. And you can see the walls a little bit lower. So where the wall gets taller there, that was the end of the building. So the building went this way, and the recording studio was just at this end. So it was an acoustic recording studio, had a piano in there, and rugs on the walls to block the sound, and a big horn coming out of the wall that they would record into.
I guess they weren't worried about the sound of the running water out there.
No, not that, but there was trains once in a while that came by the other side because of the factory. So when Hoagy Carmichael in 27 recorded Stardust, he did it on Halloween in 27, but it was like 2 o'clock in the morning when it's a little quieter around here. So a lot of those musicians, are kind of like night owls.
Sure.
So, it's quieter at 9, 10, 11, and then the early morning hours.
So you got everybody here, not just jazz, you've got bluegrass, you've got country, you've got quite a history of who's who back in the 1920s, I guess. Was that pretty much the heyday of this place?
Yes, it was, yeah. We recorded here for just about 20 years. for Gennett Records, and a lot of Midwest people recorded. See, we recorded all kinds of genres of music, black and white musicians, country and jazz, popular song. Some of these musicians couldn't get recorded other places.
Why?
Well, there's Jim Crow and other things like that. But the Genetts, they're business people, and there's niches out there. So they had a big contract with Sears and Roebuck. So some of these records were sold out in the country or through catalogs.
Through catalog, I was going to say. Everyone remembers the Sears and Roebuck catalog.
Yeah. Well, here's Lawrence Welk. Everybody knows Lawrence Welk is still on TV in some parts of the country. And he came down here and recorded it in Richmond, Indiana, from North Dakota.
That's amazing. Of course, the Bubble Man.
Yes.
Lawrence Welk and his orchestra.
Born in the United States, but he always had an accent.
Yes, he did. You're so right.
Pace Jubilee Singers, gospel out of Chicago. Blind Lemon Jefferson, one of the premier early country folk out of Texas. He recorded here along with Charlie Patton, two legendary blues people. And we recorded here for Paramount Records when their studio was under construction. And they came down here under contract, and we sent the masters up.
I was going to say, I noticed in the middle of this medallion, it says Paramount electronically recorded.
Yeah.
But it was Gennett's equipment.
That's right. Studio, equipment. He came here in 29. Both Blind Lemon and Charlie Patton were here in 29, and we were using electrical recording at that time.
Was that the start of electro recording?
27, 26, right in there. So when their
wow.
companies were doing that. Yeah.
So cutting edge right here in Richmond. This was where it all began.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to the river. Well, I'm walking up and down, going to the river. Walking up and down.
In 1923, King Oliver and his Creole Jazz Band is playing in Chicago. And we sell pianos in Chicago, not a few blocks from where the factory is. The studio, the place where Armstrong is playing music. And so one of the Gennett brothers.
And Armstrong, we're talking Louis Armstrong.
Louis Armstrong, the great Louis Armstrong. And within 5 years of being here, he's already conquered New York. He's traveling across Europe. He's an independent, huge guy.
Okay, so before he recorded here, he was just another musician.
Well, he was another musician in New Orleans, and then King Oliver invited him up to Chicago to join him. Oliver had been up in Chicago for a couple of years and wanted this young guy to come and be second cornet on the Creole Jazz Band.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history.
My favorite was Louis Armstrong, but as you pointed out to me, he wouldn't be here without this guy. Who is this?
Yeah, Joe King Oliver. Joe was the leader of the Creole Jazz Band. Joe sent a letter down to New Orleans and said, Louis, we'd like you to come up here and join us in Chicago. They're making great waves and doing great things in Chicago. And within less than a year, they came down to Richmond and recorded. Louis stayed with Oliver for about a little over a year. He married the piano player, Lil Hardin, and she was Lil Hardin Armstrong. And
Right.
they decided that Louis could grow, and she encouraged him to leave King Oliver, which he probably wouldn't have done on his own, and go to New York and work with Fletcher Henderson for a year with the Fletcher Henderson Band. And he's also in our Walk of Fame.
You got everybody.
So it's neat. A lot of the big ones, that's for sure.
So was there no one recording music in Chicago at the time? This was the place to be.
They were recording things like opera, orchestras, that kind of stuff.
So again,
black musicians didn't have a lot of choices.
You're right. You had mentioned that.
Yeah.
So they came to Richmond.
They came to Richmond. And if we didn't record them, you know, that sound wouldn't be out there. In other words, these guys had other opportunities and eventually left their groups and recorded with other people. But we had the original New Orleans sound of King Oliver, and he was king because he was #1 in New Orleans. But after World War I, a lot of those musicians left New Orleans. Some went to California, some came up to Chicago, but we're recipients of that, you know. And we documented it, recorded it, and
So you just made a point there that I think is really interesting, and that is that so much music could have been lost if it weren't for this studio here, bringing these folks in and recording their legacy. It just makes me think back of before 1926 and how much music is lost forever.
yeah. We had Jelly Roll Morton, another fabulous New Orleans musician who was a piano player. And his first solos were recorded here in Richmond, Indiana. And Smithsonian later recorded him for his second set of solos. But we had him first. So these talented people, whether it's from Tennessee, Kentucky, New Orleans, or Chicago, you know, there weren't that many recording studios around. So we were able to document that and then sell their records.
What an amazing site, what an amazing history right here. I have been told, though, that I can find in town a Starr piano.
Yeah, there's 3 or 4 of them around. One in the city building, the Historical Museum, Wayne County Historical Museum, and a few other places.
I think we're going to go look for one next. All right, everybody, we have found ourselves now in the city building here in Richmond, Indiana. And why are we here?
Because we got a good example of a piano and a medallion that's upright.
This is obviously the medallion right here.
Yeah, 2 gentlemen who recorded here in Richmond at our studio. This is Fiddle and Doc Roberts out of Kentucky and Asa Martin. Wonderful country musicians.
So why is this one here? Is it nowhere else to put it on the Walk of Fame?
No, not really, but it's a better place to display it. And you notice it's got a Champion label. That's where the country people, Gene Autry recorded on Champion. It's a Gennett label, but it was the cheaper label. See, so anyway, they were on the Champion. So there's a lot of labels out there that were printed. The records were printed here, but they were not all Gennett. There were Starr, Supreme, Champion, about 20 different labels actually.
And those were all owned by Gennett Studios. Okay.
Right, correct.
All right, now take me over here though. This is what I've been asking to see for most of the day here, and we've made it. This is a prime example of
a first-class piano. This is a baby grand made in Richmond, Indiana. The original Starr piano, ones that something they would have entered into a competition for piano making back 120 years ago.
And this was 1901.
This is a 1901. Yeah, they were making some of their best stuff. They probably were making things for about 30 years at this point as a Starr piano, or an iteration of the Starr piano company.
It is a beautiful piece of art. Actually, it's beautiful.
Great woodwork. A lot of the original piano makers came from Germany. Good woodworkers, had a lot of influx of German immigrants, and a lot of them worked for Starr piano.
1901, we're talking decades before we start recording anyone, before the record label even began.
At least 20 years before they opened up the recording studio. So this was the bread and butter. This is what kept everything going.
Do you play?
I do not. Our children did.
I don't think they'll let me play this one, will they?
No, you probably shouldn't do that. Just for looks.
So this is not the only example that we have here in Richmond.
No, no. There's some down in the Depot District. We got one at the Wayne County Historical Museum. There's a nice one in the Reed Memorial Church. There's a few of them around, and a few in people's homes, of course.
Okay, we moved on to the next site. Bob, where are we?
We're in Richmond, Indiana at the depot. The old depot, that was the heart blood of Richmond, and the people who came to Richmond to record or pass through, they came in on the train for here. In the 1920s and 30s, we had all these musicians coming to Richmond to record, and this is the first site they saw when they got here.
Can we take a look?
Yeah, let's go inside.
Okay, we've come inside the train depot here, and what do we find? The first thing.
A Starr piano. This is one of the upright pianos, and let's see what it says up here. There's the emblem. Here's the city, and some of the awards that were awarded to the piano company for their production of pianos. So somebody will play this. Yeah.
It's a gorgeous instrument, but I don't think this was in here when the musicians were arriving back in the 20s, though, huh?
This would have been a very bustling place with a restaurant. And so nowadays, it's a real estate office upstairs and kind of a gathering place for the community.
It's a great old building. I'm glad that they saved it.
Great old building. It's probably almost 120 years old now. Yeah, totally new windows and something to see. It helps give the depot its name.
So this building is a little bit more modern than the Starr factory.
Yeah. That would have predated by at least 25 years, some of those old buildings. But a lot of red brick, and that's how they built them back then.
And the tracks are right out here, the city right out here, the recording studio just, what, a mile from here?
Yeah. See, we're on 10th Street, and the recording studio was on 1st. So about 10 blocks and a couple angles over. Yeah.
Well, it's a great old building. I love it. It looks fantastic. I can only imagine what was going through some of these musicians' minds when they came through these doors, coming from places like Chicago to Richmond.
Yeah, Chicago. Or Dockery's Farm in Mississippi. Charlie Patton would get here. He's kind of a crazy guy. Came by himself, with his guitar over his back, and he was a piece of work.
And this was a bustling city at the time, right?
Yes, yeah, it was, because Indiana grew from the east to the west, and we were actually bigger than in Indianapolis for at least 30 years. They became the capital. They weren't the first capital. The capital was down south, came up to Indianapolis, but we're a town of about 40,000, and at some point, I would say back in 1900, Starr Piano was the biggest employer in the city.
In the city.
Yep, had 700 plus employees and had sales offices around the country in the big cities from New York to San Francisco.
Now, if I'm right, I think that I see another medallion right behind you over there.
Yeah, let's go check it out.
These are everywhere. These are great, though. It's you can take a tour of the city looking for the medallions, I guess, right?
Right. This is a medallion image of Roosevelt Sykes. He was a barrel house piano player, had a long life. You can see he's got a cigar in his hand, and he was quite a character. You can find him on YouTube if you want.
You said he was a barrel house? What is that?
Well, there's different styles of playing piano, but he played loud. I can't go into it. I'm not a piano player so much, but some of the folks will know what that means. Yeah.
Well, he came to the right place if he played piano. This is where you wanted to be, right here at the Starr factory. So another great stop right here in Richmond, the train station, the train depot. And you mentioned one more thing right outside here, that this neighborhood next to the station was called what?
It's designated the Starr neighborhood. So it's about a mile by a mile and a half, and a lot of old houses there. Some of them sort of run down, but there's been some gentrification.
Why Starr neighborhood? Did they own the property, the Starrs? Or?
Originally, yeah. The two gentlemen that were the Starrs over the piano company, their father moved here, came here, Mom and Dad came here from Philadelphia. They were Quakers, and they invested in the north side of Richmond, and bought property and then subdivided it, and the houses were built, and that's how they made some of their fortune.
And I bet those were a lot of employees living in those houses.
Yes, yeah, a lot of employees, many German, a lot of Irish, and many Quaker.
Okay, Bob, we come back over in the front of the building here, and I love the shirts. He's representing here. Are these shirts available? Can I get one of these?
You can get one. I hope you get one before you leave town. Yeah. The bird is a parrot, and it's they use the parrot because when you put the record on the phonograph, it would talk back to you like a parrot would talk.
So this was their original logo then?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yep.
I love it.
Our famous parrot. So we've had many musicians and educators who want to come down and get their picture taken with the parrot in front of this building.
That's the sign over here.
That's right. Yep, that's the original sign, and it's up high, and it kind of was protected from some of the graffiti artists. I've had, Leon Redbone came down here and saw this, and some of the New York musicians who have been through town would always want to come down here and see the sign and see where Lewis recorded, and if possible, get a brick to take.
Okay, so you're telling me that you have musicians of the day today even come here.
New Orleans musicians, New York musicians, Chicago musicians, and of course they want to see where their heroes recorded and what this place is about. So it's not only other tourists, but it's people in the business that want to get here.
So I might be out here someday walking around and run into who?
Warren Vichet's been here, you know.
Wow.
Dan Levinson's been here. John Eric Kelso, Pulsar, you know.
I wonder how many of them took a brick home with them.
If they could find one. We've done some cleaning up around here. Not as many as there used to be, that's for sure.
That's great. I love it. So even today, this is bringing musicians here.
It is.
If not to record, just to come back to their roots.
It's good history. It's good Indiana history, and something we are very proud of.
Starr Piano Company, Gennett Recording Studios, Gennett Records. Truly part of Indiana's story. I want to thank you, Bob. I appreciate it. An amazing place, folks. If you get a chance, when you come to Richmond, this is definitely worth the visit. Again, thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time on Indiana's Story.